All right, and we're back. So this is part two. In part one, we talked about how we make you money, and in this video, we're going to talk about how we make ourselves money, how we pay ourselves essentially. And that really kind of there's two parts to that. There's fees, right, and then there is equity sharing, profit sharing, and actually it's the third really technically, but we'll get to that in a second. So let's start with fees. And let me first explain the different fees and I'll go into them. So there's generally an acquisition fee for buying the property. I'll go into more details. There is usually some sort of capital event fee, right? Like a refinance fee or an exit fee or disposition fee, right? And there's also an asset management fee, and I'll explain what each of those do. So acquisition fee, as it's sort of described, is for the work and effort and time that's spent acquiring a deal. The deals that we go after are highly competitive deals. Of course, we try to source off-market deals wherever we can, but that's not always the case. And some of these deals, they take a lot of time and effort. I'll give you an example. A deal we're working on right now is a deal in Atlanta, in Buckhead, off-market deal, but we spent probably about 8 months, 8 months of tons of work, right? Like 8-hour days working on this deal for 8 months. Imagine, not getting paid for that, and that's what happens. Sometimes we lose deals. So, 8 months or a year goes by, or 6 months on a deal, you can't get to the finish line, then you've worked for free, right? And so how do you keep the lights on for the business? How do you pay your staff? How do you pay your employees? Well, these acquisition fees help to kind of keep us whole. Are they there to make us rich? For some sponsors, like that's what they do. Their whole business is just getting acquisition fees and then they kind of check out right after the deal's closed, and that's really it. That's not what we do. Really, our work starts at acquisition because we also self-manage. So there's a ton of work that goes into getting a property up and running and repositioning it at close. So our work doesn't end really there. So we charge an acquisition fee, and that helps to keep the lights on. Part two is I said capital event. So capital event is like a refinance or an exit or whatever. That's really the two things are. So refinance fee. You're thinking to yourself, well, geez, why not just? Isn't that your job to run the property? Well, yes and no. Um, Refinancing is also it's not an easy process. It does take a significant amount of time to do that. Whether you're shopping for a bank, uh, going through the process with different banks themselves or lenders themselves. There's a ton of materials you have to hand over to the banks, and there's a lot of work that goes into preparing the property for a sale or for an exit that's sort of outside, above and beyond the normal day-to-day things that come on with managing a property. So we charge a small fee for doing that, and the same for disposition, for exit fee, right? Being able to participate in the positive upside at the end of selling a project successfully. We try to keep those fees as low as possible, as realistic as possible, right? We're cognizant of that. And then also the other piece is asset management fee, right? So what's asset management? So there's really kind of two types of sponsors, right? When you're managing an asset, what does that mean? It means providing all of the updates to the investors, doing the accounting, the K1s, the documentation, providing updates, executing the business plan. Those are all things that help to pay for the overhead that a sponsor or sponsorship group have running a deal, right? So if we get rid of all the fees, for example, there's no fees. We spend a whole bunch of time, 8 months, for an example, going after a deal. We close the deal. We put some money our own into the deal, right? And then we have to work to execute the business plan, and we work till we get to a point where we're actually tapping into some of the equity, right? Where we're sharing in cash flows. Now, investors in all of our deals get the first pass of cash flow. It comes to you first, and then after a certain threshold, usually it could be 7, 8%, 9%, depending on the deal, we start participating a little bit. So a little bit kind of gets siphoned off to us. Um, that's generally not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things to operate a business, to pay salaries and overhead for a team that helps keep the machine well oiled. So, these fees are there to help make sure that there's lifeline to the business to help make sure that the project is a complete success, right? So that's really important for people to kind of keep in mind. So asset management is really around making sure that the investor reporting is happening, and all of the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And the last piece is equity, right? That's kind of what most people think about, right? So the way equity is structured is It depends on the deal, right? There could be a 70-30 split. It could be a 50-50 or 60-40, depending on a variety of parameters. But let's just use an example where the deal is a 60-40, right? So in a 60-40 example, investors are getting an 8% or 7% return on their capital, right? That goes to investors first. After they're paid 7% return on their money, there'll be like what's called a hurdle or a waterfall. And so the hurdle, if you get to that point, might be getting after 7, we get to 10, right? After 10, we're now sharing a little bit more with the sponsors. So maybe up to 7%, it's 100% to investors. After that, up to 10, maybe it's a 90-10. So you get 90%, we get 10%. And then after 10% return on your money, maybe it's up to 15%. And between that range, it goes from 90-10 to maybe an 80-20. So you get 80%, we get 20%. And then after that 15%, we go to an 18%. And now we're at like a 70-30. And then maybe we set the final hurdle at like a place where you're getting 20% of your money for the first 20%. And then after that point in time, it becomes a 60-40 where the sponsors get 60% and the investors get 40%. The goal that we try to get to really for our deals is to get our investors as close to 20% or more as possible. And it doesn't stop at 20%. Just because you get to 20% doesn't mean it's over. It means we're sharing it in the profits there, and that helps to incentivize us really, because all the reward is kind of baked in all the way towards the end of the project, getting towards those higher numbers. It helps us to really focus on making sure that we can totally perform, so we can participate in the profitability of the project. So that's kind of really it. So let me know what questions you got. Hope you found that helpful. I'll see you on the next video.